Mike. Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1586 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free, local, home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Advantaged Investor Podcast from Raymond James Canada. Learn how to plan, invest, and live smarter. Season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, an award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, together in the basement, what a moment! It's Ralph Benmergui and Brent Bambury.
Hey, hello.
How the heck are you guys doing? Starting with you, Ralph. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. Because on the 5th of November, I was walking home from viewing what we can call an election in the United States, and I decided I'm out. I'm out. I can't do this with this anymore. I decided to get rid of any social media apps I have, and stopped listening to news, and stopped reading about, the circus of chaos, because I just thought this is not the answer to anything anymore. And went and, decided to focus on the work I do as a spiritual director, and thought that's enough. It's not like I'm going to hide in a mountain or anything, but
right.
But I just think we're doing a circus, and I'm just tired of the circus. So other than that, that's making me much happier.
Well, I kind of did, I wasn't as big a Politico as you were, so I wasn't watching CNN and stuff, but I was still taking it in and very interested in this world around me and what was going on to the South. And since that election, I too have withdrawn somewhat. Like, news I need to know is getting to me. I'm still, listening to...
yeah, but what do you need to know? Like CP24.
Well, that's...
I go to the gym, and CP24 is every possible negative story they can find, one after the, they don't. Bus in Karachi hits telephone pole. They just don't care. It's just more of the an adrenaline drug of look out.
And that's not even an algorithm directed directly at you, exactly. Right? That's what's happening in social media. They're finding what it is that you click on, and then feeding it to you.
What upsets you?
Yeah,
which is just I'm tired of being duped. Life is short, and I'd rather work on trying to become a better human being to the people I love and to the general population, frankly.
I don't know. I think when you grew up consuming media in the pre-digital era, like we did, right? We were part of the pre-digital era of media.
Yeah.
I think you can be a little more discerning, and I think that there are things that you can reject wholesale and that other things that you can focus on. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what's going to happen next in the United States, but the thing that I want to be attentive to is who's going to be hurt. Who are the people that are going to be damaged by this kind of wholesale stuff that's about to happen. But on the other hand, maybe nobody will be. Like, maybe there'll just be a bunch of people who are enriched by it. I guess the other side of that is someone's damaged, but someone pays the cost of full-blown corruption. Maybe a bunch of people will be enriched by it, and those people are the people that you expected to screw somebody anyway somewhere.
Yeah, but when we say who's it going to hurt, I'd rather work with the people who are hurt.
Yeah.
And not be trying to figure out what's the best way to say these guys are crazy or these guys are crazy. And I just feel like we're in such a a strange place as people now. There's existential crises that we can't put our arms around, right? Like, how do you put your arms around the fact that the climate is changing? I've been trying to write a book for like a year now on climate as a spiritual crisis.
Yeah.
Sacredness, awe, these things are gone from our life. We are God, and we're lousy at it. So I'm trying to understand how to talk to people. Like, the first line I wrote for the book was, if you want to bum people out at a dinner party, two things. You can say climate crisis or God. Either one of those, and they're out. It's like, now one of those,
Yeah, well, so I just met you outside for a second. We had a beautiful hug.
Yes.
And it was so great to touch you again.
Yeah.
And to look
I haven't
at
seen
you.
How long has it
in
been?
ages.
It's been a while.
Oh, it's been a while. Like, I haven't been.
I mean, I used to touch him all the time. So
Lucky
now-
man.
I want to say something about the first inspiration I got from Brent.
Yeah.
Brent was doing Brave New Ways in Montreal, and I was in Winnipeg, and I inherited Nightlines,
Right.
which was the weekend overnight show, which had a different vibe. But I was listening to Brent before I got the job, and his beginning of the show was a cold opening. There's no sound, there's no music. He would just say something, and boom, the song would come on. And I thought, ooh, I have a lot to learn from this guy. I really thought, oh my God, he understands my ear, like he's talking into my head. So that was just total respect for that.
So the cold opening, I inherited that from the show when it began, because I took that show over about 18 months into its creation.
Yeah.
But I loved it, and I knew that it was a punch in the face, a turning of the page for the network, for the things that had been on that network all day, and then suddenly people are allowed to go. Or, and start headbanging or whatever they wanted to do for the next hour or so.
And luckily, the people who were in charge of us were asleep.
Yeah.
So
they were asleep even when they were awake. They really were, right?
We got to do the shows we wanted to do.
So management for us was it was like they were in a different country, and they kind of were, because I was in Quebec and you were in Winnipeg, right?
Yeah.
So and I think you did a bit one time about calling management to ask them a question.
Yeah.
And how all that happened was the phone
God.
rang and rang and rang, right? Because they never they were. I kind of thought they were sort of afraid of us. They sort of thought, they're trouble. They're going to cost us our jobs or whatever. And then, but they also didn't understand us. So those were two strikes that actually benefited us in some way.
Yeah.
Because,
like Ross and I decided one night. Ross Porter was my producer, and Ross said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Why don't we take some of the newscast and dub it into Robert Lepage piece, right?" And we did, and it was really cool. Then they gave us a phone call.
Yeah.
Hi, it's us. You can't use news clips on your show with music. Yeah, but you can't. You just can't. It's like, okay, just thought I'd try. But, for both of us, I think and certainly you've been there a lot longer than I have in the end, but it's always kind of been stranger in a strange land.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But there's value to being an outsider. And I think when you are an outsider, then you can, it's easier to empathize. I don't know whether that makes any sense, whether that's a little bit too reductive, but I do think when you see yourself as not being part of the...
I mean, you were from Moncton.
St. John, yeah. I was from New Brunswick, yeah.
Yeah, you're from New Brunswick.
I am from New Brunswick.
Yeah, and that matters when you're in Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you're like, people back home are not thinking about this. It's like the first time the Blue Jays were almost winning their division, Mansbridge gets on and talks about it being a national thing.
Right.
And I'm in Winnipeg. Nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody
That's
gives
true,
a shit.
isn't it?
Yeah. So it was really interesting to like the Toronto centrism, which when I finally did a variety show, that was my biggest mistake was, like big time. Let's do big time.
But you were from here. You were born here, right?
Well, I was born in Morocco. We came here to Toronto when I was a kid, when I was very small. So I grew up in Toronto, and so for me, this was a normal thing. So when I went out to University of Alberta for acting school, some kid would say, so where are you from? And I go, Toronto. And they go, oh. And I go, hey, like, my mom lives there.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh.
But in Montreal, where I settled after, that was the first big city that I lived in, the first city that had like a subway, and the mode of transportation, not the sandwich shop, but and it was fun to make fun of Toronto. And actually, I moved to Toronto, I remember, like, I was partying a lot. I was in my mid 30s, and I arrived in Toronto, and I called my friends up and I said, okay, I'm going to meet you at the club tonight, and then they called me back and said, where are you? It's like 10 minutes before closing. And I was still getting ready to go out, and that was the way that people in Montreal saw the city,
Absolutely.
And, but right now, and I think that probably some of them still do. I haven't lived in Montreal for a long time, but of course Toronto is like massive and
I had to
multivalent.
I miss it right now. I've been away for 9 years living in Hamilton, raising 2 more kids. But I have to say, when I wanted to leave, the reason was I just felt like there was a soullessness. It was too many people and not enough infrastructure for that many people.
I left Toronto too in 2002. I moved to Ottawa, and I was glad to get out when I did. But then Toronto's the only city I've returned to. I've lived in several cities across the country. This is the only city I've ever come back to. And now, I've got a kid, a house, and I'm going to be here until I die in debt. But I'll die in debt. But this is the end for me. Like, this is.
How old's your kid?
5.
5.
I became a dad at 59. Mike's met my kid, right? You met my kid.
What's his name?
Micah.
Micah, nice.
Yeah.
Wow,
it's an Old Testament name.
Hey.
Yeah.
But Ralph, you're
the right guy.
You're an older dad too, right? You can relate.
Well, I have a 38-year-old, a 35-year-old.
I've met those kids.
A 19-year-old and a 15-year-old. The 15-year-old just changed my wiki page. He just sent me a text. He said, Dad, how's this? And then at the end he puts, and of course, his favorite of the 4 sons.
Oh, you had 4 boys.
I had 4 boys.
Wow.
Yeah. I really wanted to have a girl because I just wanted the experience of trying to raise a girl. The sad thing, when we found out the 4th, Mr. Wise Guy, was coming, I just thought, oh, well, I'm kind of relieved because being a woman in this world is not a great thing. And I was depressed about that. I just thought, really, that's actually true. How does a woman walk down a downtown street after 10 o'clock at night? How does a woman accept getting paid 1/3 less than a man doing the same job? How many times is a woman harassed and physically, molested in her life? And I just thought, okay, that would have been tough. It's not like, do you want to date my daughter? No, it would have been like, what are you doing? So,
how many times can a woman run for president and be beaten by a candidate who is far less deserving?
Yeah. My 19-year-old's taking American Studies at U of T, and he was home just now. He's a lifeguard, and he does some shifts in Hamilton when he's still at school. And he came in last night, and I didn't want to really talk about the election, even though we used to talk in great detail about every possible outcome. So I said, why do you think he won? And he talked about the fact that the incumbent had too much baggage and all this. And I thought, yeah, okay. I said, but on the other hand, a lot of Americans and a lot of people would say, oh, a woman wouldn't know how to handle an economy. Trump would, because he's billionaire, so obviously he knows how to find money. But a woman wouldn't know how to handle money. And I just thought, and he just looked at me like, oh, yeah, I guess, yeah. I thought, okay. It's tough.
Yeah.
So this episode is going exactly as I hoped it would go, where I stay out of the way. And I just listen. I really do want that for the next hour, but I'm going to just set the table by saying, Brent, you mentioned I met your son, and it's because you were at Lambton Arena to get skates for him, right?
To get skates for me, actually.
Oh, for you? I thought it was for your boy. Okay. So I was at Lambton Arena because my third born had a game there. And then I see Brent Bambury in the lobby. So it just felt like a fish out of water. Like, Brent, what are you doing here? And you were picking up the skates. And then you reminded me that when you were on Toronto Mic'd, and that was February 2023, episode 1212. And I'll read the description real quick. Mike chats with CBC's Brent Bambury about Brave New Waves, Midday, which I'm going to ask you guys about in a moment, Go, Day 6, and Fatherhood. So you said on that episode, we discussed having you back, Brent, with Ralph Benmergui in the basement. And you were very excited. So like literally, I think I texted Ralph or wrote him an email from the game at Lambton Arena and said, hey, would you visit if Brent were here to have a chat with Brent Bambury on Toronto Mic'd? And Ralph, you were all into it. So that's really how this came to be.
All right, you want to talk about bumping into someone?
Yeah.
I'm in Israel with my wife, and we're on the beach, and we're walking, and it's Tel Aviv, and the beach there's nice, and I look up, and I go, Brent? And he goes, Ralph? And I go, what the fuck are you doing here? And then he goes, what do you mean, what am I doing here? I'm having a vacation. I've just been to Jordan. I'm just looking around, and I'm like, okay, this is really weird, right? Like, I'm not imagining
That's
this.
weirder than Lambton Arena.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the way that I remember it is I'm walking along the beach. I'm thinking it's beautiful. I've never been there before. It's a head trip, and suddenly there's a guy standing in front of me in a Toronto Maple Leafs hat, and he says, "Hi." And honestly, I drew a complete blank, even though I probably had seen you like within the last couple of years or something, right? But I couldn't. It's just one of those things where your
Fish
mind
out of
isn't
water.
working.
Out of
it was
context.
The context was all wrong. But just back to Lambton. I want to back to Lambton Arena for a moment.
Yeah.
Because do you remember I told you a story about Ralph when I was there? Which when we bumped into each other, and because I was buying skates, and the thing that immediately flashed into my mind was you skating with Bobby Orr.
Oh yeah.
And that was one of the coolest things, right? And it's one of those things that you got to do when you were doing like a national program back in the days of the monoculture, right?
Yeah, and you would do things. Orr, by the way, could barely skate. He was very like, oh, okay, I'll do this, but I can't stand on these for too long. His knees were completely shot. But it was just doing that. But, you would do anything. It was really weird. Like, we were out.
This was midday.
Yeah, so when I'm doing midday, I just started. And the first thing we do is go out west and do this big, massive special, a week of shooting. It's insane. We're in Prince Rupert. We're all these places. At one point, we're at this bridge where they do bungee jumping. And without even thinking about it, I went, I can do that. Why don't we shoot me doing that? And then then Suzanne Boyce, who was the executive producer, went, no, you're not doing that. I said, why? And I'm arguing with her, and I lose. And I go back to my hotel room, and I think, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
But when you're doing those kinds of shows, you're not you anymore. You're just sort of doing, like, you want people to live vicariously through what you're doing.
Yeah, you're an avatar for the possibility of what could happen to anybody who's exactly. But you skating with Bobby Orr, like, are you a good enough skater?
Yeah.
Really?
I was, I mean, being Moroccans, it's not like your parents are like, I think I'll teach you how to skate. So I just tried to keep up my friends. In those days, as part of a city budget, you had outdoor rinks built in all the public schools all over the city, a hockey cushion. And they'd flood the rink, and there'd be a guy in a little shed. And, if he was a nice one, he'd let you change your skates in there. And, and then you'd skate till your feet were numb. And you'd hit tar every once in a while underneath the ice or grass or something, and you go flying. But we did that. But my friends, some of them ended up playing pro hockey, so I had to try to keep up. But I didn't actually get into a house league until I was 13. And the guy says, what position you play? And I was like, I have defense, left or right? And I shot left, even though I'm right-handed. I said, left. And he goes, we have too many on the left. Stay on the right. Like, oh, okay. And we're playing, and I end up completely by accident scoring 2 goals. Okay, after this, I end up on a select team. I end up on the high school hockey team.
Awesome.
And I never scored 2 goals again in a game in my life. It was just, for one, I just drifted in front of the net, and there was the puck, and I kind of hit it, and I thought, oh, this is how this works. This is cool.
So what? So are you like a Jets fan now because you used to live in Winnipeg?
No, I mean, I was a Leafs fan for a long time, and then hockey, I became disenchanted with hockey.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that happened to. But what about? So did you want your kids to play?
One of my kids, my second, Chaz, he played a lot, and he was really good. He also made the select team at the same house league where we were in. I had number 2. He has number 2. I actually just gave him back one of his All-Star jerseys.
Cool.
And now his stepkid, she has number 2.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So
that is great.
Yeah.
So Hockey Ralph was not like part of your identity.
But it was. No, it was because my dad, soccer or football was pretty well non-existent in Canada in the late 50s, early 60s, right? Just nobody cared about it. You never did it at school. It wasn't part of the phys ed. But my father and all his friends were like bereft. Like, what are we going to do? Like, these people they're savages. They don't understand soccer. So they found out that hockey's kind of like soccer. There's a goalie, there's defense, there's strikers, there's offside. He got it. They got it enough. So they took the passion from soccer when they used to go over to Andalusia in Spain, the cities in the south. And he would go with his brothers, and they would watch, C division and B division Spanish soccer. Right. And you have pictures of them in their top coats with their green shaded glasses and all the rest. And they took all that. And so when they watched a Leaf game, my brothers and I and him would watch, and he'd see somebody, Ron Ellis was going in on net, or Paul Henderson. He'd go, hey. and then they'd score, and he goes, scores! So I'm at my friend's house, and we're watching a game, and Leafs are then shoot, and I yell, scores! And they looked at me like, what are you, nuts or something? I thought, oh, okay, right sport, wrong passion.
I met Ron Ellis through
Midday.
Did you? Yeah, when they were closing down Maple Leaf Gardens.
Yeah.
I went and did a piece with Ron Ellis. We walked around the garden together.
Oh, cool.
It was great. And
did you go up the gondola?
I don't think we went up the gondola. I don't remember. I mean, but all of that stuff was just very cool. That was part of your day. And the next day, you were interviewing somebody who made cookies or something, right? It was just like your life kind of, so it all evened out.
Yeah, exactly. That guy could talk about anything for 8 minutes. It was unbelievable. This is an orange. It's like, you're going to talk about it. We eat them all. This kind of orange is a blood orange. Yeah. It's just like, go. And he was in New Brunswick.
Yes, he was. Now he's in Nova Scotia. He's got a huge empire. He's gigantic.
I know, but huge. Only if you're in the Maritime.
Right.
All right, I need like water or something.
Well, okay. Well, let me set you up, and I'll run up and get you some water here real quick here. So let me ask you the big question. I'll run up, get you water.
Yes,
do you want water
Jewish.
As well?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Brent's not Jewish.
Brent, you're not Jewish? Okay. This is so...
He could be.
Midday...
I think there might be some Jews in my lineage somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah.
Midday is something you have in common. So my big question I want you guys to speak to while I go get a glass of water. How often were you confused for each other? Like, I'm going to assume that Brent Bambury and Ralph Benmergui were sometimes confused for one another.
Okay, so that started a lot longer before Midday, because there was a picture of you, I think, in the Radio Guide. Remember Radio Guide? It was like a publication that CBC used to do.
Yeah.
There was a picture of you in Radio Guide, and you were interviewing a celebrity. It was somebody famous.
Right.
And I don't remember who. And they wrote underneath it, Brent Bambury talks to so-and-so. And it was you. But we looked a little bit alike back in the day, right? We did kind of look alike.
Yeah.
Because I'm part Jewish, right? So
but you're part Moroccan.
Yeah, I'm part Moroccan. And so there was that. And then we did follow each other around a little bit. You did.
Because Brave New Ways Nightlines, midday.
Yeah. And then you became a giant sort of late night celebrity
for 10 minutes
and did that program. And
I was saying to my wife yesterday, she said, I said, I'm going to go talk with Brent tomorrow. She said, he's been at the CBC for like you left ages ago compared to him. He's been there a really long time.
Yeah.
She said, so he does the weekend show now, but how long can someone do a show? Like I said, I don't know. Day 6 he's been doing for quite a while.
Yes.
And I just said, I used to have an itch after 2 years, 3 years. I got to do something else. I was not staff, I was contract.
Yeah.
So I had to keep pitching every year to find a new show, which kept me alive, because a lot of the staff people, God love them, but they had a kind of look, a glaze.
Yeah.
Because they were bulletproof. There was nothing you could do. They'd stay forever. Right. But I just thought I should have, when I went through everything I went through with Friday night, I thought, if I just stayed at midday, I just done the Gemini Awards. Everybody wanted me to do something, and I thought, ambition took over. And I just thought I would have been probably a lot happier if I'd stayed there for a while. And probably ended up in current affairs because my problem, as was your problem, was people want you to be one thing.
Right.
Like you do current affairs, or you do news, or you do variety, or you do radio, or you do television. And both you and I have moved through both those things.
Yes.
And there's no difference. It's a candy store. Just, have fun and do shows. But it also means that when you walk from a radio variety show into an interview with someone to get a job doing midday, Mark Starowich was the executive producer of both the Journal and Midday, and he had the interview with me. He was smoking his pipe. You could smoke in your office back then. So he's smoking his pipe, and he goes, and my friend Anton Leo, who's still like a brother to me, we used to prep each other for interviews, and he'd ask me, so he said, well, here's one. You were a stand-up comic? And I said, I know. What am I going to say about that? And he said, having a sense of humor is having the sense to know when to use your humor. And I went, ooh, good one, Nino. Good one. I'm doing that. So I walk in there, and of course, Mark walks right into it, and he goes like this. He goes, you were a stand-up comedian. That wasn't serious, was it?
What a strange conundrum that is.
And I said, well, yeah, it's how I ate. So yeah, it was pretty serious for me. And then I used Anton's line, and that was that, and he moved on. But he did say to Suzanne Boyce, who was our executive producer, yours and mine, said, okay, you can have him, but if he screws this up, you're fired. And she said, no problem. She didn't tell me that for about a year, but she had a lot of guts.
Oh yeah.
I loved the way she had that show. When the Gulf War happened, we had the best time of day for live interviews with them, right?
Yeah.
And they were going to the Journal was going to take over the slot.
Right.
And Suzanne just said, you do that, I quit. Because, I'm not here to just be something until you really need the A-team. Yeah. Barbara has the night.
Yep.
We get the day. So, and Barbara was, literally.
Barbara Frum.
Yeah, Barbara Frum was, I come in, she goes, well, what do you have to wear? Because she was coming in a little early for her show. And I said, this is it. And she looked at the shirt and she went, the shirt hasn't been pressed, and went and started ironing my shirt.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, you're Barbara Frum, don't iron my shirt.
She was so kind to new people who came in. Certainly my experience, that was my experience with her, and she was very, very kind to me and encouraging.
Oh, yeah.
And, we used the same set and the same offices, right? And one of Starowitz's things was that he always loved to have a giant portrait of the Queen in every unit that he ever kind of ran. From As It Happens, because he was one of the big producers at As It Happens during its formative period, and then into the Journal and Midday. But Midday was always sort of the toy show to the Journal, right? Because we were, I think that in part it was created to justify the cost, right? So, you've got this set that's always lit, and you've got people that are there, and so you've got to put more programming out.
Yeah, look, there was no competition. We were the only national noontime television show, global, after we'd done it for a while. Global started doing it. One of the reasons I got into journalism is I was sitting on the couch in my bathrobe at noon or something in the annex, living with some friends, and I'd been an actor and a stand-up and been in a band, and so I'm sitting there and I'm rolling a joint of hash and tobacco at noon,
As Moroccans do.
Keef, as Moroccans do, and so I light the joint, and the news starts, and I see Mike Anscombe, who was a sports guy, was now anchoring the news. And I realized he was reading a teleprompter, and I just looked at it, and I looked at it completely as an acting job. And I thought, I could do that. And they pay you much better than stand-up.
Yeah, and there's work every day.
And there's
right?
work, because for me the big thing was to be productive every day. I really didn't like being an actor and waiting for someone to tell me I could work. But then I just sort of put that aside, and my sister had decided to take a journalism degree, and I asked her, I realized I don't want to be an actor. I don't. I told everybody I did I went to acting school, got kicked out the way you should. And so she goes, and I said, can I audit? And she, well, I'll ask the teacher. And the teacher was Joan Donaldson.
Oh, yeah.
Who, poor thing, she started, what was it called at the beginning? Newsworld. She started Newsworld. Right. Yeah. And I remember she came into midday to talk to us and talk to Valerie, who's, God love Valerie. But she was in Montreal, at the CBC building in Montreal. She walked out to go across the street, and a bike courier hit her. And she was in the hospital in a coma and then died.
Oh my.
But she was in a coma for years.
Yeah, years.
Yeah, years. Yeah. And now there are scholarships named after her. And so it's a prestigious scholarship to receive. I just want to go back to something you said about being there for a long time and the glazed look and everything. Because I have been there for many, many decades. And I've been doing Day 6 for over 10 years now, which when you get to be my age, 10 years goes by a lot more quickly than it did when you were 30, right? But it's I have a great unit that has some people who are extremely experienced on it, and some people who cycle through who are young and learning, and that combination is really, for me, that's wonderful, right? I have these people that know exactly what an interview should be and where we should start and where it should end, and then I have people who are smart, who are tuned into what's happening in the world, who have many different kind of connections to many different kinds of media. And I learn from them as well.
Yeah.
And, I'm probably not going to be there for for a lot longer, in part because I want to be around when my little guy starts doing more things, when he's in grade school and stuff. I want to be available to him. But creating. I took a year off when we adopted our son, and that was challenging in a lot of ways for me not to have the kind of the ability to create, to put something out. But because I have the same compulsion to, I want to be doing stuff. I want to be saying something, and I don't really care what people, it's not important for me to have it reflected back at me like it was at one point. It wasn't about, knowing that I was making.
You're not thinking, can I do this anymore?
Yeah.
You're thinking, what can I do with this?
Right. And I'm not thinking I need praise for it or I need to be recognized for it. Yeah. I just need to be doing it.
As you get older, it's interesting because, I work with people sometimes doing aging to saging workshops. Like how do you turn being older into a value in a society that doesn't value getting older, right? And part of that is a spiritual shift from ego to basically a no-self idea, that everything isn't about you trying to construct a personality. It's about you being available to what is. And I found that in my spiritual journey, it was also my interviewing journey, because to me, interviewing is the absolute core of what made any of it interesting for me. And now when I interview somebody, like I do this TV show that's half-hour TV show that is seen by almost no one, and it's fine. I enjoy doing it, but I just do one-on-one. And I find I prepare almost nothing now. Literally almost nothing. I'll look I'll Google for a few minutes somebody and just get a a wiki or whatever of them. But I'm just there to be available. And I don't have an agenda. So I just talk to people. And it's like when you were when I was in stand-up, if you wanted to play with the audience, I didn't like being a stand-up doing bits. I liked hosting because it was like writing in the sand. It was over and you couldn't do it again the next night, whatever that night was. Yeah. But I would just talk to people in the audience and they would make it funny, not me.
Right.
So what do you do for a living? I'm an accountant. Oh. And the whole audience would laugh, filling in their own idea of what an accountant is. Did you get out much? You know?
Yeah.
And then you just keep going with that, right? But for me, the interviewing is about, I mean, I do a meditative practice, and it fits perfectly to have had to sit and then talk to somebody because you're there to hear, and everyone has a story. Yeah. Everyone has a story. Yeah. Even if they tell you, I don't really have a story. Just,
right.
Okay, so let's just start talking and see what happens.
And then there's a trap door that opens in the second level, and you go down into it. And it's true. There is this moment in an interview where it goes beyond whatever you suspected or whatever you expected to get. And I mean, this is when the interview really works, right?
Yeah.
And some people are too closed. They'll never let you in there.
Yeah.
But then some people accidentally just open up, and suddenly you're in a different place.
Well, you know, when Peter MacKay was an up-and-coming star in the Conservative Party, I was doing a summer fill show for Zosky. We called it Summerside when he was doing Morningside. So I'm doing this, and one of the producers says to me, anybody you want to talk to in the 17-minute slot, in the long-form slot? And I was just like, Peter MacKay, this guy, everybody's talking about him, let's do it. And I was doing some research on him, and I thought, this guy loves playing rugby.
Yeah.
And he wasn't raised by his father, who was Elmer MacKay, who was a cabinet minister in the Trudeau years. He was raised by his mother, who was a social worker. So when I start the interview, I said, so you like to play rugby? And he's like, yeah. Oh, yeah, I love it. And what is it about rugby you love? And he tells me all this stuff. And then so did you do John Sawatsky's interview?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
John Sawatsky taught me almost everything that mattered. I did it twice. I came back 6 months later and he went, you did this already. I said, no, let's do this again. Because he was brilliant at foundation. An interview is create a foundation, a trust moment with someone, and then you pursue. And the biggest mistake made by most broadcasters that I listen to is they think the 60 Minutes style of just pursuing someone. You start and immediately they go, oh, this guy's after me. I'm going to hide in the corner, particularly things like politicians. So with MacKay, I spoke about his mother at one point, and you could tell he was so happy that someone actually acknowledged his mother was his biggest influence, not his famous father, right? And at the end of it, my last question was, so what scrum do you like more? The press gallery or the game? Oh, the game. But he felt like I got him. So that's all you need, right? Like John, one more story there. John Travolta. We used to get 5 minutes on a junket, right? 5 minutes, and they own the tape. They don't like what they hear, they keep the tape. And so I get a phone call from the producer. I was working in the arts stuff, and she says, apparently it's 3 minutes this time. Yeah. And I said, are you serious? She said, yep, they're giving you 3 minutes. Now, it was for a movie that sucked, The General's Daughter. I mean, this was an awful film. It was so he could make $20 million. So I read some things about him. He'd just done a film in Vancouver. I knew he was a Scientologist. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to say anything about this movie, and I'm sure he'll be relieved. And I sit with him, and I say, what's it like flying into Vancouver? And he goes, I love, because he flies his own plane. Yeah. He goes, I love flying into Vancouver, because you're turning the plane towards the water, and you've got to hit it just right to go just over the water and hit the front of the runway. And the lights on the way in and the mount. I just love it. It's great. And I go, why do you barnstorm alley, whatever her, what was her name from Cheers?
Kirstie Alley.
Kirstie Alley's house, because I'd read they were neighbors, and that he barnstorms her. And he goes, well, first of all, she asks me to. And secondly, she runs out on the balcony and just swaves while I fly, 12 feet above her head. But I love it. And then Kirstie Alley's a Scientologist. So I say, what's an assist? And he goes, in Scientology? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, well, it's kind of a laying on of hands, but you don't touch the person. It's an aura thing. And I have talked about Scientology without saying, why do you do that?
Right.
And then I asked the last question is, what effect has having millions of dollars had on your ability to make friends? And he looks at me, and the girl underneath is trying to wrap me up, and he goes, no, that's the best question I've been asked to date. Now, here's the thing. If there are people who I thought were really there for me and they stabbed me in the back. But the good news is the friends you had before, the friends you keep now, that's what matters. The people who love you in your life, just stick with them. And I walked out and I thought, that was the most fun interview I think I've done in years. 3 minutes, right?
Wow.
Because then it's because the excuse for interviewers is, well, I only have a few minutes with them.
Yeah, I know. And I've done a million junkets, and it is, but it is nerve wracking because they're watching you, and like you said, they can close, they can decide to shut down the camera, and
except but we're from a major market.
Yeah.
So it's not like, you're from Des Moines.
Yeah.
And like, no, you can't ask them that. But with you're Toronto, they got film-wise, that's the second biggest market in North America. Yep. So they got to be cool. Yeah. So with interviewing, what's been your evolution?
Well, Sawatsky was very influential for me. What you were saying about, people think that the Mike Wallace prosecutor version, where you ask close-ended questions that only have a yes or no answer, and you can see people shutting down and actually retreating from playing the game. It's the opposite of getting them to be open with you, and it's the opposite of the way people really talk to each other when they're revealing things, right?
Yeah.
But I think that there's something else too, which is like I think Sawatsky was a bit harsh in terms of how people connect as people, as interpersonal kind of moments of warmth or sharing and that kind of thing. I think because he did emphasize foundation, create
a bond, then pursue, then mop up.
Then the mop up.
Just throw something in at the end because you still got a minute.
Yeah, and you want to kind of reemphasize the point that you were driving towards too, and so the mop up is a way of kind of putting the.
So you thought he had lacked a certain humanity to the process?
I think he wanted us to be less human and more kind of probing. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I felt like he wanted to suppress the personality of the people asking the questions.
So what do you think now when you see that journalists have to be online as well as on air, and they have to have a persona, and it's like that moment in broadcast news where William Hurt says, and I think we're going to be okay, when he's got his first major on-air live hit.
Yeah.
Nationwide, and the producer goes, well, who the fuck asked what and I just thought, because we all, the line's been crossed.
Yeah.
I mean, I know way too much about the personality of a lot of journalists now. It's just like, really, I'm not, like, I'm here to, you're supposed to, we had a Mike, our famous Toronto Mike, Mike sets me up. I was doing the podcast with him, the Not That Kind of Rabbi. At the time we did it together. Sets me up with a guy who's a climate denier.
Lou Skeezes.
Who said, I'm never going to come to your show again after I did it. But this guy was telling me that climate is a hoax and the sun's thermostat is broken. And people emailed and said, why didn't you take them apart? And I was like, it's not my job. My job is to let you find out what Lou Skeezes thinks. Right. And you decide for yourself whether, I'm not there to debate the guy, I'm there to interview. In other words, I need you to see who the person is, and this is who he was. And he wanted me to fight with him.
Compelling audio. As
I mean, I
recall.
have debated with people, and and it's hard. It's and I've also had people accuse me of debating with them when I really think I was just trying to get them to reveal their point, and they were failing to do it, or argue their point. They failed to do so. I mean, you don't want to make your personality the story. You don't want to make your beliefs and your biases the story.
Right.
And that's definitely, that's definitely something that I think a lot of people in CBC are accused of, and especially in this climate where, there's a lot of animosity towards CBC right now.
It's been like this for a long time.
It's true. That's true. It has been like this, and I think we've always tilted left on social issues, and why wouldn't we? We're not going to. This is my opinion. So I'm not talking about but I've always felt that it was okay to. I've always felt that it was okay to reveal empathy for people, and often when you're talking about certain issues, you're taking the side of the person who's been hurt by something more powerful.
But I'm really wary of that because I've heard hosts who, at the end of an interview with someone who is sympathetic, totally side with them, and I think to myself, your job isn't to become an ally of this person because
you're not an advocate.
You might find out 6 months later that they have, God forbid, molested children.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. Who was that kids show guy in England?
Seville.
Jimmy Savile. Yeah.
Savile, that's it.
I mean, he was completely depraved as a human being, and yet he was this lovable character. And I'm just saying that if you say to somebody, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. Good work.
Yeah.
And which I've literally heard from major network hosts, and just thought, seriously, you're giving the guy the gold star, the pat in the back. It's not your business. Your business is to let me know who he is, and I'll decide if I like him. But I don't need you to approve of the guest.
I don't know. I mean, I've definitely talked to people who've experienced trauma, and I felt that I have wanted to, I think, and it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite thing to talk about. I think it's very difficult to resolve trauma in somebody's life, and there's a whole what was I was just talking to somebody about this. I was talking to a friend of mine about the list of Nazis that the federal government will not release.
Right.
And I was saying that the problem with this story is not that these people are not exposed, because many of them are dead now. The problem is that we as a society allowed a bunch of people into the country that other people who had been hurt by them had to then accept as equal citizens in their country. And they had to. So if you were a Jewish immigrant that came to this country in the 1940s, and the guy that ran the corner store where you bought your groceries was somebody that you knew betrayed your people,
right?
And sent them on pogroms or sent them to their deaths. And now you're in Canada, and you're all equal suddenly,
right?
So there's that trauma that goes unrecognized, and that is not. It's not something that people. It's not there's no way to resolve that, right? And now the country
them to be heard,
right? Of course, and now the country's still holding on to this list of people. It's a way of still negating that trauma in people. And part of me feels like this is a huge injustice, right?
Yeah.
This is an injustice, and I feel like it's okay to express that this is an injustice. I think that sometimes you have to let that come out. So you mentioned Valerie Pringle. Valerie was famous for crying on the air. Like she would cry during an interview, and I mean, and again, that's a broadcast news trope as well,
yeah.
Right? But and I remember Jan Wong interviewing her in the Globe and Mail and saying, "So you cry on air, right?" Yeah. And Valerie said, "I'm not a robot," And I think there's a part of doing this where you do have to identify as a human being, and you have to, and part of being a human being is expressing some kind of empathy.
I
right?
totally agree with you. And
so that's what I mean. Because I don't want to.
Because I really try to keep my heart open when I'm doing an interview with someone. But that's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of a person who says they're doing advocacy of some kind for a group, and then I congratulate them for doing such good work at the end. Then it's just like, wait a minute, you don't know anything about this person. You can feel for the stories being told.
And you have to be skeptical. I think skepticism is a big, of course, that's why we ask questions, right? I mean, skepticism is asking questions. But you know, and I'm just, there are points where I can tell that more of me is coming across than probably should be, or maybe that I'm more comfortable with, you know. And I'm not the most open book, right? As a person, I'm not somebody who wants to always. I'm not somebody who's always tried to export my values or anything,
right?
But there are points where empathy and human empathy is called for, and it is tricky. And you can cross a line, and there are going to be people that might get pissed off about that too, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, but I was thinking about when I was driving here, I was thinking, you and I worked in this culture of the CBC for a long time, you longer than I, and they always talk about the left-wing bias of the CBC, and I thought, it's not accurate. It is a corporate environment. I remember once on Midday, near the beginning of when I was there in a story meeting, I brought up a story and people were like, oh, that could be interesting. Where'd you get that from? Because usually in broadcast, you're pulling from print who do all the heavy lifting and then you just pimp it.
Yeah.
And I said, Now Magazine. And they went, Now Magazine? This is from Now Magazine? I said, yeah, it's a really good story. And they were like, we don't do Now Magazine stories. We do Globe and Mail stories. We do Toronto Star stories. And that kind of built-in bias. And the other thing is self-censorship. In any large organization, there is a set of values that are handed to you of this is who we are and this is what we do.
This is how we've always done things.
Right. Yeah. And this is what we actually believe is credible and this is not credible. Yeah. And so you internalize this censorship and you don't need someone to tell you not to say it. Yeah. You already know if I say this, I'll be in trouble and I might lose my job. Yeah. So there is a lot of that goes on. And there is risk adversity in any large organization and a lack of sensitivity at the fingertips of an organization. Like, how many times people at the CBC are let go just before they are eligible for full-time employment? It's just heartbreaking to see that.
But that's why it's good that we had that Kafkaesque relationship with our managers back when we were doing late night radio, right? Because the risk aversion was less pronounced then because they wouldn't answer the phone anyways, generally. So, it is. There were lots of times when I came to Toronto, when I would pitch a story and there was just kind of ignorance around the stuff that I was pitching, and so it was dismissed, and they would have been a great story. And I pitched guests that went on to become huge, but because they'd never heard of them at the time, they didn't get green light, and it was frustrating. Right?
It's interesting to be an alternate thinker in a conformist culture. Even what you've done with Day 6, it's sort of like Sunday edition on acid. Right? Yeah. Right? Because you're taking things and you're thinking laterally.
Yeah. Trying to, yeah.
Well, yeah, because, I was talking to somebody about, I was just on a spiritual retreat for 3 days down in the States right after the election. And we were talking about, people always talk about, well, look, I don't believe in God. And when I work with people, my first question is always, okay, tell me about the God you don't believe in. And they always tell you stuff like that makes you go, okay, let me get this straight. What you don't believe in is a guy with a beard on a throne with a naughty and nice list. And I said, that's Santa God. So I don't believe in Santa God either. But what this guy was talking, as a rabbi I was with in a group thing, and he said, people think vertically. They just think, even about God, they say, they point up there as if there's this guy up there. And he says, the thing that I've discovered that makes my life interesting is I think horizontally. And I think, you know, the good creatives are always laterally thinking. Like somebody says something and you don't go, and then we'll follow that right up no, then you go, oh, squish. And then you get a whole different idea out of it because it's like 3 things away from that where you go, now that would be a good thing to do. And when I listen to your show, I feel like they do that over there.
Yeah, we try to.
Yeah. You're not just going, okay, so let's stay on the nose and do this exactly. I wanted to do a podcast at one point for the CBC when they had me come back for a few weeks. And I said, I want to do a show called Why. So a car bomb blew up in Karachi. Why? Because these separatists wanted this blah, 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 and they're associated with the Taliban. Why? Because the Taliban represent for them a certain way of life and a fundamentalist point of view, which is literal and certain. Why? Because we live in an era where, you know, and just 8 whys till you get to the bottom of something.
Yes.
Right.
And
That's how I talk to my kid. That's how my kid talks to me. Right?
Oh, yeah. Your kid is always like, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why? And then, of course, as a parent, at a certain point, you go, okay, you know what? Just because.
Because I said so.
I don't know. Okay.
I want to remind you of something.
Yeah.
So when you were hosting Midday, I was a columnist on Midday. So I was sometimes here, and I would do the show with you, and then I'd come to the story meeting afterwards. And I was here one time, and you had done a funny little doc for the show, and it was about the film festival, the Toronto International Film Festival. And at the end of it, you're standing like outside a theater, and you're saying, you know, I think it was Jean-Luc Godard who said, and you lean back on a limousine, and suddenly the horn honks, and someone says, "Hey, don't touch my car!" And it was so funny. It was a good joke, but in the story meeting, they hated it.
Yeah,
right. And it was like nobody liked it, and I was like, "Are you kidding?" That
well, they're all
so
trying
funny.
to be taken seriously,
right.
I mean, that's the whole
they
thing.
were like, "I wanted to know what Jean-Luc Godard said." It was insane. But that was kind of what you're up against when you're dealing with, you know, an institution. Right?
It's also humor and journalism. Where do they meet? Right? Like, you were a comic. That wasn't serious, was it? Yeah. It's just like, oh, I have to look like I'm always serious or you won't believe me. Yeah. Right? Like when I hear you doing your show, I hear an energy coming towards me. And the energy sometimes is really enthusiastic about something, and sometimes it's just nuanced, but it's always a current that's running through. Yeah. And that way you can pivot to funny or pivot to serious. Yeah. Right? You don't have, you know, you're not like, Enright was ironic, right? But he was a damn good journalist.
Oh, yeah.
But he was an ironic, his humor was always in the ironic sort of lapsed Catholic way. Yeah. Right?
I loved Enright. And
oh, yeah, me too.
And, you know, so Morningside, which I think you actually, you guest hosted it.
Yeah,
you?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I never it was gone by the time I was kind of at the point. But you know, so Zosky ran it for many, many years. And Zosky was this giant presence at CBC. And Morningside was like the flagship show. And it was eclectic, and it was folksy, and it was kind of rural. Like Zosky had a kind of, he loved talking to farmers in Saskatchewan or button collectors in Nova Scotia, or, you know, there was always, so you could do a 15-minute interview with somebody who collected, I don't know, you know, sleigh bells or something. And then Enright had it for a year. I think it was still called This Country in the Morning.
No, it was This Morning.
It was This Morning.
With,
oh no, that was later. This was Enright. Enright had an interim. Zosky left, and Enright came in, and he had that show for about a year. This was in the 70s.
Benoit, you know?
and then it but when Enright did it, it was urban and zany and crazy,
right.
And everybody hated it because of that, because it was not Zosky, right? And I think Enright looks back at that time as being one of the big failures that he had at CBC.
Yeah.
But when I first met Enright, I said, you know what? I loved you on that show. It was kind of like David Letterman, you know. And I was living in New Brunswick at the time when I listened to him, but it was so not rural and so not folksy. Yeah. It had that kind of, that sort of smart ass urban kind of sheen to it, and he was so great at it, and I loved it. And to me, that said, oh, CBC can do this as well. But at the time, CBC Radio was really committed to voice of the pioneer type stuff, right? It just had that.
Well, but they understood their audience.
Oh yeah.
In that, once you leave Toronto and you're driving across the country, it's just like you're not in Kansas anymore. Like you're in a different country. Like I certainly, as a Spanish Moroccan Jew, when I'd leave Toronto, small town Canada was like, oh, wow. Like if I moved here, even when I went to the University of Alberta in Edmonton, and people would say, you're the first Jew I've ever met. And it'd be like, you like my horns? Like I don't know what to do with this. Right? And they just sort of look at you and you realize you now represented every Jewish person on earth, because if you spit in the street, that means Jews spit in the street, right? So what he had, though, was also, and I loved the format. That was my favorite format, 3-hour magazine. I just loved it, and I hate that they don't do that now. That there's Matt has a show, and then Tom has a show, and then that commotion thing just drives me up a wall.
But 3 hours a day,
and I like the guy. I think he's a good broadcaster. But do I need a water cooler Netflix conversation every day? No, I don't.
But we used to do and on Brave New Waves, it was 5 or 6 hours a night for 5 nights a week. Like that was a long haul. That was crazy.
And you start for the Maritime, so you were 1 hour. I was 2 hours.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So we started taping at 10.
Yeah.
And walk out at 3 a.m. or something.
In Winnipeg, the middle of winter.
Ooh.
Minus 30 something.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, it was grim.
Yeah.
And during the day, you're normal, trying to book the thing or do the music. We had a lot of fun. I thought Brave New Ways had way more edge than we did on Nightlines. We were much more into just classic FM, where you could go from a literally almost a classical music piece to an ambient piece to a heavy New Order piece, and then so that's what I loved about it, because I'd grown up on classic FM.
Yes.
Like Chum FM and Chum FM when it was really Chum FM, and
the cover
really
of Donald Fig and the Nightfly, right?
That's right.
That is pretty, and it is pretty seductive. That whole idea. No, but we were definitely like, we're going to play some hardcore. We're going to play some, anarchic socialist music, and it was out there, right?
You guys went deep.
Yeah, and we're going to play. Then we're going to do like a half-hour Throbbing Gristle concert. So
we did Deja Voodoo.
Yeah,
and
they were great.
For a Halloween show, we did Deja Voodoo live in Winnipeg, and the Cowboy Junkies, because I'd gone. I'd heard about this band, the Cowboy Junkies, and they were playing in this really nobody was there bar in Winnipeg in the dead of winter, where there was about 12 people in the audience, and the first band was a 3-person power trio. And they finish, and 9 of the 12 people leave with them because they were their friends. Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and Margot Timmins is literally facing the back wall because she can't believe she's doing this for nobody. Yeah. And I walk up to them after, and I go, you guys, after your show tomorrow night, you doing anything? And they're looking at me like, who's this guy? And they said, why? I said, I do a CBC show, overnight show. Why don't you come by and we'll talk? So they came by and we did the interview. And then we phoned them up and said, we want you on our Halloween show. And they go, oh, yeah, it'd be great. And are you guys union? And they said, no. I said, you got to be union if we broadcast you. And he was like, well, no, we don't want to be union. I said, it's a national show. You got to be union. So they joined the union to get on the show.
That's great. That was also something that mattered then, like having a national program.
Yeah.
And whereas now, media is so fragmented. It doesn't really matter whether you have a national program.
Everything's national.
Yeah,
Everything's
national. And everything exactly. So, but at that time, it felt like insane to think, okay, and I loved saying that. Hey, Canada, this is what we're doing tonight. I loved talking to the country because we were. That was that.
You'd occasionally get some guy in Colorado who had a satellite.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we had lots of listeners in places like Ann Arbor and Seattle and places like that too. And then our show get picked up by WXPN in Philadelphia, and then that was
cool.
kind of insane.
How long did you do?
10 years, just about 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So remember what I said earlier? 10 years when you're in your 50s, it goes by really quickly. But that was so. It was a long time. Yeah.
God, I did 2 years. No, a year and a half on Nightlines. Yeah.
Was it really that short?
Yeah.
Wow.
Ron Robinson was doing it, and I was booking. Louise Penny was the afternoon show host in Winnipeg.
Yes. The great writer Louise Penny.
Yeah. So at the time she was not doing that. She was a host. She ended up in Quebec doing it as well.
I knew Louise.
And so Louise, we book Emo Phillips. So I pre-talk Emo, and he gives me a great line. I said, "How you doing? How you enjoying Winnipeg?" He's like, "Oh, it's been raining for 3 days, but it's a dry rain." And I thought, what a great frickin' line. So I put it in the interview. And I was on my way to Thompson, to Lynn Lake, Manitoba, for a friend of mine was getting married. This is hundreds of miles away from it. So we're driving towards it, and I'm listening to the interview because I'm not there. And she goes, and joining me now, playing at, I can't remember the comedy club's name, Emo Phillips. Hello, Emo. And he goes, "Oh, you're one hot bag of estrogen, mama." I'm in the car going, I am so fucked with it. Yeah. I come in on the Monday and they're like, "Never again, no more comics." I said, "I don't know. The rest of it was pretty funny." Yeah.
Sorry, Brent.
When I was doing I went to Ottawa after when Midday got canceled. I went to Ottawa and I did the afternoon show in Ottawa.
Yeah.
So I was doing a daily show in a market where CBC was like huge, right? And I loved it. And of course, again, it was because I just wanted to work, right?
Yeah.
And I was glad to get out of Toronto at that time, but and it was fun to be, in the culture of a station where there were people committed to putting on shows all day long. Right? But one day, the way the news worked, the way the local news worked was there was a little booth, and at 2:00 it went hot. So you didn't have to turn on the mic. You just had to push the news cart to play the news theme, and then you had to read the news. And so I was listening at my desk, and it was 2:00 news. And I said, "Okay, here it comes." And so I was waiting for the news theme to play, but it didn't play. Instead, I heard somebody rustling papers, and kind of and so I knew, something's about to happen here, right? And then I just heard, "Fuck." and because she lost it. She didn't know where she couldn't get it right.
Somebody get Lawrence.
Yeah. So then Lawrence Wall, who was the news director,
just retired.
Yeah, lovely guy, funny, dry as hell. And he came in a little later and looked at me, and he had a big smile on his face, and he said, "We started a newscast with a fuck today." And I said, "Really?" I said, "You know what? Actually, Lawrence, I heard that." And I said, "Were her grandparents listening?" And he said, "Her grandparents, her Sunday school teacher," and he started naming all the people that had heard this. But anyway, it was just one of those things. And
he was a classic announcer. Oh yeah. Right?
Well, he did the official time signal.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, I'm thoroughly enjoying this, and
Are you still here?
I know, I was going to say, showing great restraint. So here's what I'd love to do with your permission here. I just want to very briefly walk through Midday. That's the show you guys had in common. And then I'm going to give you some gifts, and then I'm going to get the heck out of the way again. And basically, until you guys tap out, you can talk about whatever you like.
What was the theme for Midday? I'm trying to
bum 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 something like
something Midday with Valerie Pringle and Brent Bambury.
Right. I never did it with Valerie.
No, because Valerie.
I did it as a guest host with Valerie.
Yeah, but you were doing it with Tina.
With Tina, Tina got the job. And so it was Tina and
Kevin Newman.
Kevin Newman, right. It was Tina and Kevin Newman, and then Kevin left to go to ABC.
Right.
And then I got the job.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the beginning, in 1985, okay, so we take us back to the drive of 85. Shout out to number 11, George Bell. So, 1985, can you guys name the original hosts of Midday?
It was either Bill Cameron or
Peter. No, Peter was
after.
second.
I think Keith Morrison.
Yep, that's
Keith
right.
Morrison
Keith
and
Morrison.
Valerie, right?
Yeah,
Was Valerie? Yeah.
So Bill and Keith, I guess, rotated or something? I don't know, but the Keith Morrison, Bill Cameron, and Valerie Pringle are there in 1985.
Keith was first,
Okay.
and then he went to L.A.
Yeah.
To do the news, and was married to Perry.
Matthew Perry's
Perry's
mother,
mom.
Suzanne
Perry.
Perry,
Yeah.
Suzanne Perry, who'd
Right.
been a press secretary to Trudeau.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he was the stepdad to Matthew Perry.
That is correct. Okay, so then
What do we win?
you're doing well. Oh, here's a fun fact for you on our way. Just brief little midday chatter here. Fun fact is one of the people considered to be a host of Midday in the beginning was Dave Hodge. Did you know this?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
No,
he
I
was
didn't know that.
considered for Dave Hodge, by the way, in this basement next week. So
Great. Yay. I
shout
love
out to
Dave.
Dave Hodge. He's going to tell us his 100 favorite songs of 2024.
The powder blue jacket.
Yeah. But a lovely guy. I hosted an event at, it was a Christmas event, and it is the drunkest I've ever been in public. It was
I love
insane.
you, man.
Yeah.
I love you.
But Dave was there, and oh man,
Dave.
Paul Coffey was there. It was
Your
It
hair.
was a huge event.
Wow.
Yeah. He was very
Snap
sweet.
it off your head.
The Tragically Hip were there, but anyway.
Wow, that's
it
a
was-
big event.
Yeah.
Ralph, you took over for Peter Downey. So maybe
Yeah.
just a brief, how did you get that gig? And did you know that one of the people you were kind of going against is your good friend, Stuart McLean?
Yes, I did. I was in Cannington, living in Cannington. I was doing Primetime, a show on which I really love doing, Canada's show about show business. And I'd taken over from Stan Carew,
Yes.
who'd done the first year, but they weren't getting what they wanted, so they got they got me. So I was doing that for 2 years, and I'm at home in Cannington, and I look in the newspaper, and Sid Edelman has written that they're looking for a host for Midday, and that they've been looking for a while, that there were a lot of people being interviewed. And in my life, there's been certain jobs where I've just gone, just something has jumped in me, and I thought, ooh, I'd love to do that. And I thought, this is going to be tough because I'm coming from variety and from radio, and they don't know if I can do this. But I thought, I'm going to go for it. And I phoned, and in those days they had this blue sticky memo things, and they put them on the door of the person, and you'd have to take them all and phone these people back. So Suzanne Boyce called me back and said, oh, well, sure. Why don't you come in and we'll have a chat. So we had a chat, and then she said, okay, well, we'll put you on for a week. So I went on for the week with Valerie, and Peter Downey and them had not been getting along, shall we say. So I start to do the audition week, and I do the first day, and Stuart calls me up. Hi, it's Stuart. Hi, Stuart. What's going on? He goes, we're competing for the job.
Oh my gosh.
You know, well, I said, should I do it in your voice? And then I saw him walking down the street. And I said, Morley. And he went, you know, I hate when you do that. I said, I know, but I was talking to Morley. We were doing a Christmas special once up in Belleville, TV one. Stuart's, I'm driving, Stuart's sitting there. You know, it takes a while to get to Belleville. And I go, do you not find it odd that you have this whole story, the storybook village, and meanwhile you're divorced, your kids and you are like arguing in real life? And he goes, Ralph, it's a story. I'm not trying to pretend that's my life. I said, but nobody knows that. They actually think you live with Morley.
They do, actually. He had that kind of mystique around him.
Oh, absolutely. He loved doing that thing. So anyway, I said, well, sorry, but, let's see what happens. And then I did the week, and I realized this is going well. And then they said, we're going to offer you the job. And it was a really weird moment because I realized, for one thing, I have no suits. I work in radio, right? So I had to go and buy suits. And I felt so awkward because the woman who did Valerie's hair did my makeup and hair. She did my hair. I counted how many sprays of hairspray.
Teresa?
Yeah.
Teresa.
I said, Teresa, stop doing that much. She goes, I don't do that much. I'm not doing that much. I said, okay, fine. The next day I go, I'm going to count how many of these she does. And she stops at the end. I go, okay, I counted 17 sprays on my head. I said, like, my head's going to fall off. Just leave me alone. Okay.
You told me once that one of the things you hated about that job was the monkey suit. That's what you called it.
Yeah. Because it's all theater.
Yeah.
I was sitting with Tina one time, and the theme had ended, and we were doing, did a lot of sitting around because you're doing pre-tapes all morning, and then they packaged the whole thing together for the show. Yeah. And I said to her, this is theater. And she went, no, it's not. It's journalism. And I went, Tina. Da-da-dun, dun, 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 da-da-dun, dun, da-dun, dun. Midday, and then the journal, and the camera comes by. I'm Ralph Benmergui, and take me seriously for Christ's sake. Right? And she was just like, oh, I said, come on, this theater. I mean, if I was sitting here in a T-shirt, you'd be like, what the fuck is that guy doing? Sitting there with a Meanwhile, in radio, you're sitting there with a T-shirt.
Yes, yeah. But on midday, I would often wear shorts, right?
Yeah, I did that.
And so you would wear a suit from the waist up.
So we got up. Yeah. We were telling people we were going to Nunavut.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't we, because she was wearing shorts, I was wearing shorts, why don't we get up at the end and we'll get a little suitcase and we'll just go, okay, see ya.
That's great.
And then Suzanne phones down, no.
Yeah.
No, do not keep that.
Yeah.
That wasn't funny. I said, it was funny. Because, okay, it was funny, but no.
Yeah.
Right? And Valerie was game. She was the best.
And you left to become, like you said earlier, to become host of Friday Night with Ralph Benmergui.
Well, yeah, I had this moment, and I thought, I would love to do the Ed Sullivan Show with only Canadian talent. I said to Yvonne Fitzon, I said, I want to wear a tuxedo. I want to stand on the side and go, and here's the Tragically Hip, and here's whoever, right? And everyone was Canadian on this show. And he said, no. We'll do this, but you can't do the tuxedo thing. You got to be a stand-up. You got to be a talk show host. You got to be, and it became everybody's show. And Brian Lanahan came to one of the dress rehearsals before the first show, and he said to George Anthony, "There's Brian," and he said to George Anthony, "They've put the entire building on his back. Do you realize that?" And George, who was trying to tell me to book people that Tommy Hunter had booked, we had a huge fight about that. And he just went, well, it's too late now.
Well, your show knocked Tommy Hunter off the air.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
You killed Tommy Hunter.
Yeah, I killed Tommy Hunter. And then what did they do when they killed me? Rita McNeil.
Rita McNeil killed you.
So what does that tell you about what people wanted? Not a Spanish Moroccan Jew named Benmergui. Is Ben your first name? No, it's son of. Never mind. Yeah.
So on Midday, Ralph, you're replaced by Kevin Newman.
Yes.
And Kevin is replaced by Brent Bambury.
Yes.
So Brent, did you have to audition? Did you go against any heavyweights to land that gig?
I didn't have to talk to Starowitz. I think things were a little bit looser by the time I came along.
But did you have an audition week?
I kind of had an audition. I think I had an audition 2 weeks, and it was a bit of a slog.
Right.
I don't think it was the happiest time.
Right.
But they ended up offering me the job, and I got it. And so I went.
Why did you want it?
I wanted it because I had been doing Brave New Waves then. I moved from Brave New Waves to that, and I wanted to do something that would give me a little bit more profile.
Right.
I've been doing television as a contributor to Midday and as a guest host, and I felt like I knew how to do it, and I liked being on TV at that time. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But there were things that I ended up missing. Like I do think it's really hard to do this kind of an interview on a television show. Like it's all about the visuals, and it's all about and Midday actually kind of sometimes the interviews went on for too long for a TV show. Like if you watched it in fast motion, it was just like heads going back and forth, you know. But
totally different animals though, TV.
Yeah, and I loved the traveling. I loved traveling. I loved going to. I went to where James Bay meets Hudson's Bay.
Yeah.
You know,
you get to see what nobody gets to see. It's like,
and meet cool people there too. I mean, it was really great. But
radio to me is by far my favorite medium.
Yeah.
You know, I still do jazz, the Jazz FM thing once in a while. I did 6 years of morning show at Jazz when I left CBC. But for me, this is the intimate medium, radio.
Yeah.
This is the theater of the mind and all that. But it's also it's a hot medium. You have to imagine the person. Didn't you always find when you actually meet somebody who didn't ever see you, that they wouldn't believe you were you? I got that all the time.
Sure,
Well, they thought Brent was Ralph Benmergui.
Yeah.
And they thought I was Brent Bambury. Do you know how many times I got, so Brent? I go, no, I'm not Brent. I'm Ralph. Oh, no,
Ralph Brentmergui.
Ben Brent Fergie.
Yeah.
Could I play just a little audio from June 30th, 2000? So you'll hear this in your speaker here.
You accept credit cards. You can't have a party without balloons and without music, and the Arrogant Worms have written a special party song for midday. The Worms are known for writing music that makes you cry. Here are Trevor Strong, Chris Patterson, and Mike McCormick, collectively known as the Arrogant Worms.
It's the last episode of Midday ever, right?
Wake up exactly at
And
Monday.
you know, it was a sad thing, right? It was a very sad day, and I was unemployed the day after this, and I remember one of the last things when I said goodbye. One of the last images, and they used this on the National when they did a little story about it that night. I did this kind of, it was almost like a Zen movement, where I took my hands and put them down like between my knees, and then I raised my arms up like it was a letting go. Right, that was just an image of. I just wanted to let it all go.
Oh, nice!
Because I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I felt I was 40 years old. which felt really old at the time, you know. And I felt like, what the hell is going to happen to me now? And but
you gotta have the leaps of faith, right?
Yeah, you've got to know that there's going to be a next thing, and then when you're in the next thing, you'll be in that thing.
Yeah,
and then, you know that's.
But why did midday come to an end?
Oh, so it was. I think part of the reason was because CTV was running Wheel of Fortune against us, you know.
Yeah.
And it just sucked all of the ratings out of it. It was just people wanted to, you know, they didn't want to have information anymore. They didn't want that much talk, you know. It was
also they were getting more competition at that time of day. There were more noontime magazine shows that were on the air.
Yeah.
When I was doing it, there was nobody doing it, so we had no competition. You either watched us or you didn't watch. You know how many people I've talked to who were in university or college?
Right, that watched the show.
The show. And the other huge cohort were Maritimers.
Yeah.
Because they went home for lunch.
Yeah.
They were human beings. They actually went home. And I go, how did you watch the show? You worked? I said, well, you go home for lunch.
We didn't call it lunch in the Maritimes. We called it dinner. And then,
that's right.
And the evening meal was supper.
Yeah.
Well, it was you guys or it was the Flintstones. I think those were the options.
Yeah.
But, so this final day, the Arrogant Worms there, you can find this on YouTube. It's quite a funny little farewell to midday by the Arrogant Worms.
Yeah,
remember those guys? So June 30th, 2000. Ralph, I take it you came back for that final episode.
You were there.
Oh, God.
I believe all former hosts were there.
You were there with Keith
okay,
and Bill.
All right.
Alabashon.
Yeah.
And
Bill.
and I think I guess Valerie must have been there. And
For sure.
She must have.
Must have been there. I think everybody came
So
back
sad
for that.
when Bill passed away.
Yeah.
His son played house league with one of my boys. And
I loved Bill.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Again, dry.
Oh, my God.
So funny.
He said,
Bill Cameron.
He said, his advice when I got midday was, try to make sure they take the hanger out of the back of your jacket when you sit down. and the pickle out
Good
of their
advice.
ass. And I said, thanks, Bill. That works for me.
Okay, I'm going to give you a few gifts, and then you guys take me home. I'll just be quiet, and I'll play an extra at some point. Brand new extra by Rob Proust, by the way, so stay tuned for
cool.
a brand new extra. First time I
How
ever
many
played it.
shows have you done?
1586. This is 1586.
Don't you find the way he interviews fascinating?
Yeah.
Because people, he bothered me for a year, and I thought, who is this guy? What does he want? And then I finally thought, okay, he's asking nice every time, so fine.
I'm polite.
So I go, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I have no idea who this person is. And we do this interview, and then I go home and I go, I actually like that. That was fun.
And that was episode 330, which we recorded in April 2018.
Oh my God.
Mike chats with Ralph Benmergui about his years at CKLN, CBC Radio, hosting Midday and Friday Night with Ralph
And
Benmergui
still,
on
we're doing
CBC.
the same shit.
Mornings at Jazz FM. We talked about Mike McDonald, Stuart McLean, fatherhood, Hamilton, your spirituality. What more do you want in
Same
the
shit.
conversation?
Morally, I said to Morally. I've taken some mushrooms, Morally. I'm seeing the world a whole different way. I'm laughing more.
Gentlemen, what are you doing on Saturday, this coming Saturday, which is November 30th, 2024? I'm putting you on the spot because the 17th Toronto Mike Listener Experience is happening at Palma's Kitchen in Mississauga from noon to 3 p.m. And everybody who can hear my voice right now is invited. And if you guys showed up, you could jump on one of the open mics and wish everybody a happy festive season and say hello. People, the FOTMs in attendance would love to see you.
Here's the best thing, you see, because I get to go, I'm sorry, it's Shabbat. I don't go out. I don't go out and work and do errands, and but the real reason is because my weekends are serious family time.
You're busy.
No, just,
What family?
my wife works, she's a psychotherapist. She works very hard all week. She used to be a journalist for 15 years.
I think she was just winding that up when I saw you guys
she was
in Israel.
That's right.
Yeah.
And she was parliamentary bureau for CTV, and she worked at Global Queen's Park bureau chief. And then she went, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And I like to spend my weekends. Yesterday we did 14,000 steps. I know you ride a bicycle further than anyone on the planet.
That is true, Brent.
You actually are. It's getting to be I'm a little worried about you.
Personal best for kilometers biked every calendar month except one. I'm gonna later today. I'll hit 1,000 for the month of November.
Gets nutty
That is
with
great.
I'm gonna hit.
Don't
I'm gonna hit
encourage him.
like 14,000 kilometers in 2024.
So, but let me ask you a question about this because I bike too. I biked. I took my kid to daycare on a bicycle. I sort of live downtown, but the daycare was right downtown, and it feels like being a cyclist is political now.
Absolutely.
And so I just wanted to know how you feel about that. Like it's almost like you want to avoid saying it to certain people because you don't want them to kind of.
It's been.
It's like I'm vegan.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely has been politicized, and it's kind of unfortunate because now they're ripping up lanes that I literally use, every single week. And that Bloor and the Young, those two particularly. Yeah. I was at Young and Eglinton earlier this week for an event, and I took the Young down to Bloor and Bloor across to Royal York, and it was super safe, and I felt very, secure. And now they're going to rip that up and put me in the lanes. With
Montreal does it very well.
Yeah,
Montreal did it before there was even a demand. I mean, they built lanes, separated lanes so early.
Toronto is in so many ways often disappointing. In terms of this stuff, but this isn't Toronto's thing.
No, this is
Doug Ford's thing.
Yeah.
And he should, stay in his lane, as they say. It just feels like...
well, when his brother got elected, wasn't that the first thing he said was the war on cars is over? And I thought, if this is a war, you guys fucking have it. You've nailed it.
But I think that it's temporary. The lanes will be back at some point at great expense.
Exactly.
$48 million.
And like Brent, so this morning, my 8-year-old and we biked to hers. I took her to school on the bike, and it's locked up at the school. Yeah. And then I'm going to pick her up, and we're gonna bike to swimming lessons, which at 5:30, and then we're gonna bike home. So I get the family biking. I go everywhere I can. I said Young and Eglinton from here. It's like, okay, if I can bike it, I can bike it, and I'm gonna continue to bike with or without bike lanes because I biked in the '90s when we had no infrastructure.
That's right.
I did then too, but you got doored a lot.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm
in the side view mirror.
You got to be
to see if
careful.
they're there.
You got.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
Jesus!
Look
Brent's
at
got an
that.
injury in his left
Dislocated.
pinky.
I had surgery on this, and
I broke a pinky, but
It never came back?
It never came back. No, that's from cycling.
I've got a few broken bones.
That
from
was a
cycling,
great
too.
promo.
Yeah.
Okay, so be careful. I just make sure that I got space. I'll take a lane. That's one thing, and I'm adamant.
So
I will take the lane.
November 30th.
Okay, so, yeah, let's get back
I'd
to
love to come, and I would love to bring my son, but
Yeah.
I can't because I have a Jewish reason for not coming, which is
Is your partner Jewish?
no.
Oh, okay.
No, but it is that I'm going to see Cabaret. I'm going to see the fall
does that qualify?
of the Weimar Republic set to song and dance because a friend of mine is in it, so I have to.
It's a great musical.
So-
it is a good show.
I will burn through this so I can pass the mic back to you guys. You can just take us home here. But I want to thank Palma's Kitchen for hosting us because they're going to feed everybody who comes out to the event on Saturday at noon. They're going to give you a hot meal there. And I do have lasagnas in my freezer for you two gentlemen. I know, Brent, you got one just last year.
I did.
Was it good?
Yeah, we fed the family. Are you kidding? It was great. Loaves and fishes. It was terrific.
Okay, you're going to get more lasagna. I have fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery for you guys. And Great Lakes will also have a beer at the event, TMLX 17 at Palma's Kitchen on Saturday. So everybody come out. There's some cool people that are going to show up.
Do you have a burial plot from Ridley
Exactly.
for me?
I have a measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home.
For
the
what?
green-
To measure my corpse?
Brent, what are you going to
Someone's
measure with
gotta
that
do
measuring
it.
tape? I saw you handling that. Someone's got to do it.
It's a gig.
Thank you, Ridley Funeral Home. There's wireless speakers for you. Those are from Moneris, so you can listen to season 7 of Yes, We Are Open, which is an award-winning podcast where Al Grego went to we talked about Winnipeg earlier with Ralph. Al went to Winnipeg and he talked to the co-owners. They're twin sisters. They own Jenna Ray Cakes. And they talked about their dream 15 years ago in their small apartment. After watching an episode of Cake Boss, they decided to start a business. It's growing into a legitimate business despite numerous legal and logistical hurdles. And those kind of stories, trials and tribulations with small business owners, is what you'll find on Yes, We Are Open, the award-winning podcast from Moneris. And you guys can listen to that with your new wireless speakers. Woo, I'm pausing for applause. Okay, last but not least, those USB keys, those are courtesy of recyclemyelectronics.ca. Cliff Hacking was here last week. He's the man in charge over there. I literally dropped a box of old laptops and some old cables. I dropped it off at a recyclemyelectronics.ca location, Staples near Sherway Gardens, if you're curious. So go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, stick in your postal code, find out where you can drop off your old tech, your old electronics, your old cables to be properly recycled so those chemicals do not end up in our landfill. Got it?
I love the wagging finger part of that.
I just saw a documentary on Netflix about how we are building these laptops and we're building these smartphones.
The shopping one?
It's called Buy Now.
Yeah, Buy Now.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But it's like there's no consideration to end of life. And you can't pop open this laptop and put in new memory or give it a larger hard drive or replace the battery. When it dies, you throw it out.
Yeah, but I mean, I do strategic communications for Green Party of Ontario.
Yes.
So trying to talk to people about things that are hard to explain, like externalities, all the things that the company doesn't have any responsibility for, a circular economy, which in Europe is now normal. We live in such a backwater of consumption. We just keep devouring everything in sight. Mm-hmm. And if you look in between elections, 2 years out, you will see that the environment is second probably in terms of what people care about, first or second or third.
Yep.
And then 6 weeks out from an election, it's at the very bottom of the list.
Yes.
It's like the fact that this guy can give you $200 and stuff him in your shirt as he's going, by the way, you can get beer around the corner.
Right.
And $1 billion to do that and another $1 billion to do that. And we still fall for this crap is what made me go at November 5th. I'm done. I'm done trying to convince people this. The only thing, the revolution is within. If you can have a revolution within, you can have a moment with someone and both of you can be here in this short time we have, be here. I'm just so disillusioned with the way we are so amnesia That's the only word I can take. Just amnesia.
Yes, but there's an inflection point, right? Like the country is burning. And
yes.
And when the country burns, more greenhouse gases are emitted.
Yeah.
And so the feedback loop is getting tighter. And, being a dad now of a young kid, I think about it all the time, right? Like, what is this world? I think about, is this house that we live in, which is the only one that probably we'll ever be able to afford, is it going to be, in 20 years, is it going to be an oven? Like, is this house going to still be providing shelter in the environment that we're going to leave, that my son's going to inherit? I think about it all the time, and I don't know whether it's too late to actually affect change. I don't believe it is, from what I can tell, but I think that we're getting there. But my God, don't you feel that you have to be engaged in order to, like, you say that
I'm not doing this to not be engaged. I'm doing it because I believe that if you don't change from the inside, the change won't come from the outside. Because you can go on the air and tell me that there's a fire in early March or late February, a forest, wildfire in Alberta. Yeah. I will only treat it as that moment.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a fire. Oh, and now the fire's out. Yeah. When an entire town burns down like Lytton did, people just talk about resilience. I'm gonna pop back.
I know.
There's books written. Peter Marshall wrote a book on climate communications called "Don't Even Think About It," because we can't take this in and still buy into neoliberal capitalism that is absolutely extracting everything it can from you as a person, me as a person, and from the earth. That's why I focus on the crisis as a spiritual one. If nothing is sacred, then who cares? Take everything you can. The whole idea is to amass a private fortune. And yet, what is the biggest problem? One of the biggest problems we have in the world right now? Loneliness. The World Health Organization is calling it a global epidemic, equivalent to a pack and a half of cigarettes a day in terms of the toll it takes on us. Yeah. And all we want to do is live in our own house, not have to deal with anybody, and just take shit until we're how many people have type 2 diabetes now? Yeah. How many people? And what is it? Watch a bacon double cheeseburger being sold on television. Yeah. Like with your kid, with my grandkids and with my kids, what I do is I mock the commercial the minute it comes on. The shit, Silverado. I'm going to drive it right into your head and kill you. Silverado. Right? And yet, we're now reliant on these people to fund us. Yeah. The CBC's television funding is almost completely dried up. And it has to turn itself into a private TV station and compete directly instead of being the public broadcaster that cares to tell you what your country truly is about. They have to find some show. Why did Midday go? Because the eyeballs weren't there anymore. Right. Because of what? Wheel of frickin' Fortune. Right? So that mediocrity that passes as culture, and then guys telling you that we're going to strip bike lanes out because you got 2 more minutes on your commute. So we've just got the wrong stuff going. So I got to change that within me. Mm-hmm. That's a hard enough job, and try to do it with my family. And then whoever you can affect, we do Sabbath dinners on a Friday night so people can come together. You know how hard it is to do and how many people go, well, I said I was coming. I'm not. It's not a roller skating fucking party. It's Sabbath, right? It's stop. 1 day a week, 6 days you do, 1 day you be, just 1 day, turn it off. If we turned off that phone, all of us around the world at the same time, you'd save 1/7 of the energy that we are now spewing out. We're more greenhouse gas emissions now, not less than 5 years ago. We have more. So what do you tell your kid? And can you change the world for your kid? But maybe you can change how you are with your kid, and then that kid has an effect, and who knows what they'll be. One person can do a lot. So do it like that. That's my rant.
You take your kid biking to school as you do, right? And you try to keep them safe, but you also try to let them know how beautiful the world is and that there are things that transcend us that we hope will be here before, that have been here always and we hope will be here after we're gone. It is hard to communicate the values that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think that it's possible, and I think that there are ways you can do it subtly, and some of it really is conscious resistance of the things that are being shoveled at you all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you think you'll do after you do day 6?
After I do, I'm going to be a full-time dad, I think.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what I mean. I think I've got 10 years of that, and then I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I don't know what it's going to be like to be, a senior citizen a decade into it.
Well, I must say that I was so used to every 2 weeks a check landed in the bank account.
Yeah.
And I did that from when I was 30 till I was, I don't know, maybe 62. Yeah. When I worked at Sheridan with the president there for 5 years. And so all these, and Queen's Park, and then no more. And then I really had to go through a year of staying confused, because all of a sudden it was, I've got to generate work, and it's much harder to be a freelancer than to be in a thing. But I would say that the compass for me was to be true to what I really believed was good, even if the money wasn't obvious, and just thought, the money will come. Yeah. And it does. It took me about a year, almost 2 years to realize, just be yourself, it'll come. Yeah. It'll come. So for me, that was the only thing, is stay confused. If I had an answer right away, it probably was the wrong one. It's like a rebound a boyfriend or a rebound girlfriend. Mm-hmm. You just like, no, not yet. It's probably going to be the bad decision. Just wait for it. So I think that kind of helps.
I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but when just the year before the pandemic, I got accredited to scuba dive, which was something I've wanted to do all my life. And, being in that environment, like being weightless under the ocean, and, and the sense of vulnerability that you have when you're breathing through a tube, and, if you go up too fast, your blood will boil and all of those things. But at the same time, learning to let go of that, and, seeing sea turtles and giant swarms of sardines and other marine life, it was kind of life-changing. And I'd like to do more. I'd like to do more of that kind of thing. I'd like to do some of that with my kid. And I'd also like to maybe try to figure out a way of, connecting to the ocean in a political way,
right?
Like through volunteer work or something. So I'm living in landlocked Toronto, so it's going to be hard to do, but I think I can do it. But, I grew up on the coast, and I do feel this connection that
we got a lake, Brent.
Yeah. I don't know what the visibility is like. I don't know what the visibility is like there. The visibility in up in the sort of like Georgian Bay is insane. Like you can actually see wrecks on the bottom when you're in a boat. So I think there'll be lots of opportunities, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that I'd like to connect with
and then you can tell, and also you can use your skill set, right, to tell stories, to connect us. Yeah. Because to me, that's what I mean about the awe. We don't have awe, but when I see a really well-made piece about the natural world, I think two things. One is, oh my God, like even if you don't believe there's a God, which is absolutely fine, because it doesn't help you to understand anything. I get it, but how miraculous is this world we live in? Like the things that, the balance, the harmony, we're the disruptor. And when you see it. Yeah,
we're the disruptor. And most of our lives we spend like interacting with a tiny fragment of it.
Oh,
right?
Well, we're on pavement. Three stars in the sky, and one of them is a jet.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
It's just like, once you see a skyscape, you're like, wow.
I think we promised Brent at the beginning 60 minutes.
How many minutes is it? Yeah, how many
He's going to be on 60 minutes? Wow.
I'm the new host of 60 Minutes. What do you think? I got to say, that was magic. This, before I thank you guys thoroughly, I just want to say thank you to Rob Pruce. Are you a fan of the Spoons?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, Pruce spent all night composing a new closing theme that would evade the algorithm that detects I'm using unlicensed music. This was the plan, okay?
Wow, that's sick.
Because I close every episode with Rosie and Gray from Shakespeare My Butt, which is the lowest of the low song. I'm going to see them at the Rivoli next week. Can't wait to see those guys. But it gets caught by the bots, even though I have permission. And then I said, Rob, just throw something that has a bit of Rosie and Gray in it. A little bit. I wanted a little bit of the Friendly Giant. I'm hearing it now in the headphones here.
Nice.
And then I said, throw me some Pizza Nova jingle.
There we go.
Zappacosta did this.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he
yeah.
came on
Oh,
and
yeah.
told us about
Costa
it.
do the Pizza Nova one?
Yeah, Alfie Zappacosta. And guess what this Pizza Nova, it goes into?
I'm Dominic Malilla.
Nova Heart?
Nova Heart.
Yeah.
No, actually, this is Romantic Traffic.
Romantic Traffic.
Which Rob Proust has a co-writing credit on.
Yep.
So it's all here, looking for feedback. I have to loop it because it's not quite long enough, but we'll, oh yes. I wanted some Kids in the Hall theme.
Ah,
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of the Rivoli here. So this will loop a little bit, but I want to thank you
Shadowy
two
Men on
gentlemen.
a Shadowy
Shadowy
Planet.
Planet.
Don Pyle was just here.
I love Don.
And he came. He's cutting hair for half the FOTMs.
that's great.
You got any hair under that hat?
A little bit, yep.
Okay,
Still got some
Don
hair.
Pyle will take care of you.
it's the only
But
thing I have left.
you're doing well.
Damn right I'm doing well.
You're doing very well. You guys should be proud. But I want to thank you, Ralph Benmergui. You
Thank
came all the
you.
way from the
I am
Hammer.
so glad. I just want to say, and this is, I don't want to be, I'm so glad you're still here.
Thank you.
Because I know,
on planet
I know
Earth?
it's been a journey.
I've had a few.
I know you have.
You're like, oh.
You know what, Brent? You know
You
what his book
missed
is
me.
called? His book is "I Thought He
But
Was
you-
Dead."
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no. My wife looked at me yesterday and she just, there was some picture of me and she said, I liked you when you had your nose.
Did you have like a relationship with your nose, like Barbara Streisand does? You know, where
Yeah. it
Did
was
you
a
believe that
good
it was
Jewish nose?
and it was part of who you were?
Absolutely. Well, look, trust me, if they took half your nose out and then you had a different nose and you now look like Stephen King.
Michael Jackson.
I literally had a woman walk up to me when we were in North Carolina or something, and she said, "My son won't come out of the room." And I said, "Oh, okay, why?" She said, "Because he's convinced you're Stephen King."
Oh my God.
Are you Stephen King? I said, "Would it be better if I was Stephen King?" She said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, no, I don't want to break his heart. I'm not Stephen King." So she comes back the next day and goes, "He still doesn't believe me." I was like, "This used to be a Jewish nose. Trust me."
Well, can I donate some of my Irish nose to you? You can have a good chunk of it if you would like.
Well, you say that.
And by the way, I had a great chat with your wife at Kelsey's
You
at
did.
the Humble and Fred event.
You did.
You
The
know,
most beautiful, intelligent, vibrant, lovely woman I've ever met in my entire life.
my wife, Monica.
No,
Or you-
mine.
We should do like a double date. What do you
Yes.
think? I'm serious.
Of course, but do we have to ride our bikes there?
You know what? I'll bike to Hamilton and I'll put Monica
How
in
long
the
does
trailer.
that take?
I've done it. It
I
took,
know you've done it. You've done everything.
It took many hours. It takes a long time. It takes a long time.
I have an e-bike.
Anything that puts less cars on the street makes me very.
That was
very
your way of
happy.
saying bullshit e-bike.
No, I'm happy for that.
Did you not catch that moment?
I said I'm happy for that. I'm happy for that. So I'm happy for this. So Brent, thanks for reminding me at Lambton Arena and that we made this happen. And
Yeah.
just being a fly on the wall and listening to you guys talk for 90 minutes was incredible. So thank you both sincerely. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,000. The Friendly Giant's in my ear. How can I focus? I got to think on this new closing theme.
I said morally.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,586th show. You can go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. I'm also torontomike.com on Blue Sky. That's where I'm posting these days, having a good time with the engagement there. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. They're sending beer to TMLX17. Palma Pasta, they're hosting us at TMLX17. That's November 30th. Everybody come out. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Hope to see Cliff Hacking there. Raymond James Canada. Monaris. Al Grego will be there. Come say hi, pulling his beard. And Ridley Funeral Home. Brad Jones will be there. See you all tomorrow. When my special, I'm vamping because I don't have this loaded up. I'm going to find out who is my guest tomorrow. It is Rob Nash. This guy's from Winnipeg. Inspiring story. He's been traveling around the country talking to school people about suicidal ideation, and he's got a great music that goes along with it. It'll be inspiring as heck. Rob Nash in the basement tomorrow. See you all then.